1 of Athena-Rising, where we pose 36 questions to powerhouse female lawyers.
Our debut guest is United States Magistrate Judge Lauren Lewis, who sits in the Southern District of Florida.
On this episode, we discuss who Judge Lewis really is and why she thinks women can have it all, but not all at once.
We're glad you're tuning into our podcast. Whether you're an Athena or an ally, welcome. Ladies, let's rise. Hey, Marisol.
Hi, Vanessa.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Athena-Rising. Thank you for joining us on our weekly podcast and blog.
Today, we have a special guest, Judge Lauren Lewis, who's a magistrate judge in the Southern District of Florida, and we're very happy to have her on.
Judge Lewis actually needs no introduction. If you practice in the Southern District of Florida, you know very well who she is. Judge Lewis was selected to be a magistrate judge in February 2018. Prior to that, she was an attorney of Boyce Schiller here in Miami. And prior to that, she was an assistant United States attorney in the district. Judge Lewis is a Baltimore native who moved to our Sunshine State to clerk for Judge Moore, which we'll talk to her about. In addition to wearing all these different hats and having such an ambitious career in life, Judge Lewis is a mother of two, and she's married to Dory Lewis, a prominent defense attorney here in South Florida. Thank you, Judge Lewis, for joining us. It's a pleasure.
It's really my privilege to be here, so thank you.
Well, without further ado, welcome to the program, Judge Lewis, and let's get on with our 36 questions with Athena-Rising.
I'm ready.
First question, you're a magistrate judge. Tell us what that really means.
I wish that everyone who thinks about applying asks that question, because it's remarkably different, candidly, than what I thought I was getting into. And I was sure that I knew it from all sides. But you really don't know until you're over here, even having been a law clerk and having had the relationship with my paired magistrate judge, who was then John O'Sullivan. But what it really means, statutorily, the magistrate judge does everything that the district court judge does, except felony sentencings and felony criminal trials. But for that, we can do exactly the same work. But as a practical matter, the difference is, some of the things that we do that they don't include settlement conferences. I didn't know how much of my job would involve being a mediator. And we do the initial and ex parte criminal matters on duty week, which I did know, but I had no sense, honestly, of the pace of until I started. No matter having been both an AUSA and CJA defense counsel, you still don't, you think you're busy until you sit on this side, and it's very different.
Much of your docket is criminal? Because a lot of people have the perception that the magistrate judge, that mostly what they're doing is criminal. Is that true?
No, it's about 80% civil and about 20% criminal. My current pairing with Judge Moore has me doing more criminal pretrial work, which I love, and it's fast paced. But our team, the 17 of us and the 8 of us here in Miami, statistically, it's 80% civil work.
Wow.
Tell us the truth. What do you really like doing better, civil or criminal?
I like hearings. So whether that's in my criminal matters or my civil matters, I am a junkie for my hearings. And that's the most invigorating and exhilarating part of the job, is great oral advocacy and evidentiary hearings and never knowing what's happening next. So I like it. It doesn't matter whether it's criminal or civil. If we're in the courtroom, that's my happy place.
People may not know this, and you alluded to it, you've always wanted to be a judge. You just said that, there's parts of it that have surprised you and that have, it's been eye-opening for you, even though this is something you've always wanted and, you clerked. What has actually been the most surprising part for you?
What surprised me the most when I first started is the exhaustion of the decision making. I was very surprised having, you both know what it's like, how exhausted you are in trial, especially when it ends and you don't even realize how you've been going. You both know how exhausting it is to be a mother, right? But that is what surprised me the most was, and it's well documented now. There are, of course, now I see it, studies that show that the jobs that have the highest level of stress are ones where the person is continuously required to make decisions. So it's in that respect, you think it's like being a lawyer, only you get to not have to advocate, you get to decide, but you have to remap your brain in order to do it, and especially to do it quickly. And it shocked me at the beginning how just exhausting it is. Probably not the answer you were looking for, but that is, I would say it was my biggest surprise.
It's a surprise to me that that's the answer you gave, actually.
Yeah, but no, and we appreciate that. I think that's the point of why we're doing this and why Marisol and I wanted to do this. We want the real and honest answers for especially women who are considering, your role one day. It's important to know that going in. So we thank you for being so candid, frankly, with us.
I really do try to caution people, especially young folks that are starting to think about it. I love this. I can't imagine my identity without it now. But I still, it's like training for a marathon. You don't get up and say like, and now I will do 26 miles. So I try to let young folks that are thinking about it know early that it's going to be a seismic change.
A lot of people also say that being a judge is very lonely. Do you find that to be the case?
I really don't. I have one colleague in particular who I tease when he or she says that, because I tell that person that it is him or her. It's not. That is a lovely human being. But it is different how folks approach you now. It did take me a while to get used to being called judge, especially by people who knew me for so long, and how the relationship had changed. And at the same time, for federal judges get law clerks, right? So in this system, I always have two brilliant people here with me all the time. And I think that my colleagues, we are very interactive. And so I have found that I have as much of a team, I feel like, here as I ever did at a law firm or at the U.S. Attorney's Office.
That's awesome.
But I did hear that a lot. I heard, and I really expected it, but we're in constant communication over here.
Yeah, but that might be a personality thing, Judge, too. You're a very social person, and perhaps that's what also keeps you from feeling that way. I hope so.
Maybe.
So you talked a little bit about the exhaustion you feel as a judge, and you alluded to the exhaustion that Marisol and I have felt knowing, being trial lawyers, trying cases, being moms. This profession is not easy, no matter what hat you're wearing as a mother. A lot of women and women in power are either not making it to the top, or they're choosing to leave the profession and do something else, or they're choosing not to be in positions of power and management. How do you think, having been in private practice of voice or having been in AUSA, having clerk, now being a judge, what are your thoughts on how we can better the profession for women and make that easier so that, we finally break that glass ceiling and more women are not just entering the profession, but making it further along?
I didn't check the list before we started, but I think of the 17 magistrate judges, I'm not sure that we don't currently have more women than men. I say that only because I feel that there's always room for improvement until there's 9. Isn't that the quote?
100%, Judge.
But I think that it is not. I always say it this way. I don't have an external suggestion about how the system should change or how culturally what needs to change. What I would say is that, if you look at my colleague, Shanique Maynard, right? Jackie Becerra, Melissa Damian, myself, like we're all women who have school-age children and we're all here, right? It's a long way of saying that it's within our reach and everything in its time and with the right support. So I think that we, as women in the law, I think that we have a fair amount of control over that. I'm not sure what could be changed to improve it for us. I think we've got the tools and we've got each other. So we often joke about the village that it takes. And so whether it is, deciding at what point in your career is the right time to have young children and which career you're going to pursue when you've got toddlers in your house and you're not sleeping, and which career is right for you when you've got teenagers in your house that you need to be, looking over their shoulder, and basing that in part on, where your partner is or where your parents are or where your best friend is, and who your colleagues are. We have, I think, a lot of tolerance for each other now. I'd like to say, at least it feels to me like in our career, I've always had at least one best friend working mom who had my back, if I was going to miss pickups or she was going to miss hers, or even within the workplace, if I couldn't get something done and she could, or vice versa. I've stepped into trials for another mom, and I've had others go to hearings for me so I think that we individually and as a community of lawyers have it within our grasp now. I don't know that what needs to change.
I love that, Judge. I mean, that's if I hear you, I think what you're saying is make sure your village includes other women who can help you. And I mean, like I as you were speaking, I was like, I'm so glad I have Marisol, because on the, defense side, there's not that many, women in white collars, not that many women on the defense side. And we're very lucky. Like this wasn't forced, it was organic. But I'm glad that you have that. And I agree. I think if more women had that, they'd feel okay getting to the top, or getting where you're having the support to get where they need to go.
Support is critical. Asking for help when you need it is critical. Recognizing that it's going to be your turn, both to give the help and ask for the help. To be open-minded on both sides of that equation. And I think like finds like in that respect, right? Like we find each other, and then you got to cling to your working mom friends, right? They're critical.
We do.
Yes. Sometimes you want to call about a legal question, but sometimes you just want to call about school, or you're having a bad day, and it's just sometimes only people in the same situation can understand some of the struggles that we go through as women.
It's so true. And really back to your question about the loneliness, without we call each other siblings on the bench, both my sister judges and my brother judges, but we can relate to what we went through to get here and what we're going through now. And you're right, Marisol, it's just like that. Sometimes you just need to hear somebody else say, and then he spilled chocolate milk on me and I've got a hearing in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank God we wear robes.
Yeah. I think that brings us to our next question, Judge.
Can you tell us about a dilemma you faced in private practice or when you got on the bench, and how you handled it?
Oof, any dilemma?
Any dilemma.
You can talk about the chocolate milk if that makes you happy, Judge.
It really used to be yogurt more than chocolate milk. The number of times that I picked my son up to say goodbye and got to work and just had that like signature yogurt smear that I just started wearing off-white blouses and sweaters, very washable off-white sweaters. But it's so funny. I'm sure that I have dealt with it. In fact, I remember the first time that I interviewed with the district court judges, Judge Gales asked me to describe an experience I learned from, good or bad, in that moment. It was like Dan Aykroyd's character from Ghostbusters, like, don't think of anything, don't think of anything. And of course, the Stay Puft Marshmallow jumped into my head and I felt like sharing it with him. I cannot think of anything other than the oddity of showing up to work. Yes, with who among us, as again, sleep deprived moms of young kids, have you ever shown up with 2 different black shoes? Me and several of my colleagues, when I was in private practice, we just started leaving a pair of nice heels in our office because of the number of times that each of us did that. Wow. And that was our workaround. I am sure that something more significant has happened, but somehow only the wardrobe malfunction is coming to mind.
That's okay.
No problem, Judge. Now, when you were at Boy Schiller, you were on the CJA wheel. And we have to ask about this because there's so many lawyers that, are reluctant to join the CJA wheel that are in the private sector because they're scared their firm partnership are not going to support them, and because there's billable hours on the side, right? How were you able to manage your firm commitment and billable hours with being on the CJA wheel, and what do you recommend to others?
Oh, I recommend that you put in the CJA wheel needs you, and you need you need to be in court. If you've got trial experience and the chops for it, you got to do it. And this is where I say, throw your hat. I mean, the first lawyer I ever worked for had this way of expressing himself that when there's something insurmountable in front of you, two people approach the same wall, and one just stands there and says, I can't get over it. And the other one takes his hat off and throws it over the wall. What'd you do that for? He's like, well, now my hat's on the other side. I have to go get it. Throw your hat. You will figure it out. And that may sound like easy professional response, advice coming from someone who is here. But that was how I have always structured my career. I'm going to throw my hat and then I'm going to figure it out. As a more practical matter, though, I never had more than 2 appointments at a time. And so it's a manageable amount of time. I had 4 different cases that I prepped for trial. Not one of them went through with it, but that it's the prep that takes a ton of time, right? And
Absolutely.
But each time that I did so, again, you recognize where you need help. You have got to be transparent with the folks that you're working for, whether that's clients, if you have that relationship, or the managing partners, or the folks that are on your level and are going to have to step in for you. Be transparent, make sure that everybody's on the same page on the expectations. It's a great way to stay organized because with criminal stuff, you don't know when it's coming. So you better be caught up on your civil stuff. That's a very practical piece of advice I want to offer. And if you are at a law firm and have the support, then bring a junior person in with you. First of all, they have more time. So let them, they can handle some things for you. Plus you're mentoring them. So your firm also likes it. It's a matter of perspective in a lot of ways, right? So don't absorb the belief that you're a drain on your firm because you're not doing billable hours. You are bringing something of great value to your firm. And if there's a temporary consequence that maybe you're off this other billable case for a week or 2, that's okay. You throw your hat, you figure it out, and you keep it as a matter of perspective that this is a great thing for yourself professionally and for your firm and for the district.
We're going to be using your hat analogy, Judge, in the future.
Yes, we are. You moved to South Florida to clerk for Judge Moore, and he's well known as having a rocket docket. Can you tell us what Judge Moore is like off the bench?
No. You have to clerk for him. Judge Moore is my first, truest, and primary mentor. And other than that, you have to clerk for him.
Okay. And for those considering a clerkship, what would you say was the best part of clerking for you? And what advice would you give them as to how to secure a federal clerkship?
Well, that question makes me think, who are these people who are not considering clerkships? Apply for clerkships. There are so many opportunities, and it is absolutely indispensable. I know we were saying how I always wanted to be a judge. I didn't. I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I know,
Really?
I know it's a strange story, but I was in a college class and I encountered a memo that was authored by then law clerk Bill Rehnquist to his judge Jackson, and I discovered that there was this job where young people are lawyers for judges, and I was like, I need to know what that's all about, and I wanted to be a law clerk when I found out that that's what they do. So I am lucky enough to have not known how hard and prestigious that was when I applied and luckily got a clerkship. The best part of clerking, for sure, is the relationship with your judge. See, last answer.
The stuff you won't tell us.
It is an absolutely remarkable thing to come out of law school, to be at the beginning of your career and have the ear of a federal judge or, you know, an appellate judge. I mean, there's so many different options for you, but to have the ear of that pinnacle of our career and hear unfiltered his or her thoughts about the legal system, the case, the lawyers, the district, you name it, right? That's like, it's so exciting. The advice that I would recommend to young people is please let go of the fallacy that there is a right time to clerk. I'm going to work for a couple of years, I'm going to save up some money, and then I'm going to clerk. Just again, recognize that opportunities, when they are presented to you, you must take them. And so if you're at a place where you've been introduced to a judge or to a clerk who encourages you to apply, read the tea leaves and go for it. It's an indispensable part of your career. And the other thing that I would recommend is to do a little research. Okay, like I said, there's lots and lots of different kinds of judges. So you're not stuck with the handful of judges that maybe your partner have mentioned by name. Just go online and take a look. We've got the state appellate court judges, the state Supreme Court judges, all of the federal judges, the magistrate judges, and go ahead and apply.
What's the best piece of advice, Judge, that you received when you were applying for the bench? You still with us, Judge Lewis? We can't hear you.
Yes. No, I'm really
Okay.
thinking about that.
Okay.
I had
lost you for a second.
Jean, I'm gonna say that the best piece of advice I got was the first piece of advice, because without it, I know that I wouldn't be sitting here. There's all kinds of other things that contributed, obviously, but the first time I applied, I'm not even sure I'd been licensed for 5 years. I know I hadn't been licensed in the state of Florida for 5 years, but the opening came in and I was said, I'm doing this. And someone very wise and very patient said, it's a process. And when you put in, you will learn something, and then you will learn something else, and you will learn something else. And so if this is what you want, pursue it, and recognize that while that may be your goal, between now and then, if you structure your career and your activities solely focused on this will help me get the position, it won't. If you are not actively, practicing the law and building relationships in your community with your peers, community service, whatever it is, that genuinely speak to your interest and abilities, that falsity will come through and you won't actually end up advancing yourself. So you have to still continue to be your best version of yourself, mindful of your setbacks and, focused on what your career path is, but recognizing that it's a process.
Let's talk a little bit about your life off the bench. We know you have 2 kids. How do you balance motherhood with the demands of your job?
Recognizing that I can't be in 2 places at once is the short answer. And I was not good at that for a while, right? So I don't know how many of you have had the experience of being at work, feeling the guilt of not being in
Yes.
a school field trip. My son is on a school field trip today, which I am not on, and that's okay, right? So like coming to peace with, I needed to be here today and I couldn't be there. But when he comes home, I will be 100% present for him then, and vice versa. So I have learned to forgive myself when I have to miss things with my kids, which I try to very rarely do, but accept it when I'm not going to be there. And likewise, when I am with them, no matter how pressing it is, if I cannot stop what I'm doing with them, then I have to, again, forgive myself and be with them until I can get back to the work thing. It also helps, I think, to be, again, very transparent with them. I'm lucky my kids are 10 and 12 now. And, my son may run in and he wants to tell me about his latest Minecraft. And I say, I want to know. However, I can't listen to you right now and do what I'm doing. So can I be fully present with you in a half hour? And, I think that it helps them to understand, and they're very proud of me. Right. So that's the biggest part of balancing it, is recognizing and forgiving myself that I cannot be in both places, that I do it all. You can't
Right.
do it all at once.
No.
You have to triage.
Yeah. Maybe we could do it all over time.
Yeah.
Okay. Judge, you talked a little bit about finding that right balance, right? Figuring out you can't be in two places at once. Was it easier for you to manage motherhood when you were in the private sector, or do you find it easier now?
So I read a great article the other day trying to pair out why siblings are so different when they're raised in the exact same household with the exact same parents. And the author very astutely pointed out, it's not the same parents. You are not the same mother and professional and wife that you were at 28 than you are at 36, right? And likewise, Josephine and Charles were both born while I was at the law firm. And so I'm not the same mother to a 10 and 12-year-old now that I was when they were infants. So it's hard to answer that, as apples to apples. But I would say that the challenges have been in the same vein with respect to each of them, right? It's always the crisis that comes up that makes you then sit back and say, this is my fault because I haven't been home and I'm not doing their homework with them, or whatever the case is, right? It always has that same feeling of,
Yes.
I'm not a good enough mother, or I'm not a good enough lawyer. So everything is so cyclic. I would say that the challenges are almost exactly the same. But as the magistrate judge, I do have the ability to say, I'm going to set hearings on this week when Dory's out of town. I'm going to only set hearings at 10 or 11 o'clock or something along those lines so that I can manage pickup. I have to confess that is a difference that, I didn't have when I was in private practice. I was not setting my commitments and schedule. That's controlled by a client or by the court. So that is the only piece of it that is different. But in terms of the big stuff, the stuff that really matters to us, it's still the same.
Yeah. Now, your husband, Dory, has a very successful career himself as a lawyer, and he's in private practice at Boyce Schiller. How do you two manage two successful professional careers and parenthood and life?
Poorly, very poorly.
We were
Thanks for
hoping,
being honest. Thanks for being honest.
we were hoping you have the answer to this. We were hoping you would tell us the answer to this so we could figure it out.
It is one of those answers that when we both retire, then we'll be able to answer, right? We'll look back and be like, well, it was the short answer. Gosh, I feel like this is that theme, is to be very open with each other about, the expectations and the crises. So when Dory's got trial, or when I've got trial, or I've got duty week, you block it off for each other, and you recognize that, you're in it for the long haul. So everything might fall on your shoulders during this week or this 2 weeks or whatever it is. Dory's trials tend to be fairly long. Then he's got your back on the next one. I think that the only more practical answer is with a sense of humor, right? Like I would say that Dory and I laugh off a lot of catastrophes with missing pickup or whatever, and just say, you know what, it happened. We're all okay. Let's look at the humor of it, because that gets you through on with the motivation to do it again. But everything changes from day to day. We try to be respectful of each other's schedules and commitments and priorities, but they compete. There's no two ways around it, right? Like, so there are definitely mornings where we look at each other and say, but I have an 8 o'clock hearing. And that's when, I look to my sisterhood, and, we've got a neighbor who will take this kid, and another neighbor who's going to pick that one up, and we're going to figure it out, because, it's the long game.
Yep, sure is. And levity is life. So I'm glad you're laughing. How does Lauren make time for Lauren?
The expression like micro changes, the first time I heard it, someone was talking about like micro changes for a diet, like give up your one, high calorie soda a day. That's a micro change. So same, I was introduced to meditation. Marisol, I think you were at this Bench and Bar conference. It was a couple years ago. I think maybe like even 2015. And Judge McAlilly led a discussion about meditation and mindfulness, which at the time was really the first that I had ever had it introduced to me. And it taught me an appreciation that I might not have an hour to sit down and meditate and do yoga or something else, but I can find 2 minutes there to stop, breathe, whatever it is. Or I can find 5 minutes to call my mom and check on her. Maybe I can find 15 minutes here. And then you get hooked on the good feeling. So all right, so if I found 15 minutes, then maybe I can find 20 minutes to do yoga on this Saturday. So again, I think it comes with a lot of forgiving yourself for not hitting the hour mark and being very grateful when you did get 10 minutes or 15 minutes and wanting to find it again. But I'm not as good at it as I sometimes wish I was. Finding time for Lauren used to mean riding horses. And I gave up my horse when Charles was 2 because I couldn't be everywhere all at once. And so I have not gone back to the saddle, so to speak. So there are still that I'm really trying, a work in progress, to forgive myself, but having given up like my core passion by telling myself that I'm just not doing it yet. But again, I mean, doesn't that come down to our balance? It's not that we can't have it all. We can't have it all right now.
Right. You'll come back to it, Judge. You will.
I hope so.
Yeah.
You will. And in the same vein, how do you and Dory make time for each other in your marriage?
I mean, forcibly. I mean, like anything else, if you don't set a deadline to do it, it's not going to find itself. Mm-hmm. So, I'll tease him. I'll send him calendar invites.
I love it.
And
I love it.
Like anything else, I'll put it on the family calendar, and it might be at the weirdest time between like pickups on a Saturday, and I say like, stop, you will meet me here for coffee, like, whatever it is. Or, on this particular Thursday night, I'm going to give the kids a grilled cheese sandwich and send them off to their room, and I'm going to make us a nice dinner. But forcibly is the answer. And it's, I understand the marital advice, especially right after we have kids. You guys are younger than me, but when I had Josephine, it was a very popular sentiment, particularly to working moms. It's always our fault, that they needed to set aside time every week for their husband, right? Like, even if it's an hour, but you have to have that date every week. I disagree. I think it adds one more thing to the pressure cooker, because then if you didn't get to it this week, then you have to make an excuse for yourself, or maybe you need 2 hours next week. I don't think there's anything magical about the 7-day mark or the 14-day mark. You want to do it when you need it. So sometimes you feel it building up and you know that you need it. And, but you have to make it a conscious choice. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah, that's true. I love it. Now, Judge, imposter syndrome is real. I think that we all feel that different times in our life, in our career. And actually, I don't know about you, Marisol, but I find like the older you get, it doesn't get easier, right? Imposter syndrome sometimes gets worse. It's scary. Have you ever felt that, and how have you dealt with it?
I didn't know it had a name until I got here. And well, I'm just going to call him out. Bless his sweetheart. One of my colleagues gave it a name and told me, that's just your imposter syndrome speaking. And that was very eye-opening. Like, to give it a name, to recognize that, first of all, I'm not unique. Lots of people have it, and lots of people overcome it. And so too I can. And absolutely, I set a very large evidentiary hearing right after I started. I really had no business setting such a large hearing right after I started, but I did. And I started, I'm in what used to be Judge Ungaro and Judge Chernoff's chambers. And so in Atkins, we actually have a tunnel that goes out to the courtroom. So the first time I had to put the robe on and go out what I still consider to be Judge Ongaro's tunnel, I froze like a cat being forced into the box, arms out to the side. And my courtroom deputy put her hand on my back and shoved me into the courtroom. True story. So absolutely. Heading out there in Judge Ongaro's courtroom, I felt like a fraud.
Oh, no.
And then you recognize that the district had the confidence in you to put you up. And the district
Yes.
court judges had the confidence in you to put you up.
Absolutely.
And, you've had these supporters and you start to, that comes back to you. And most importantly, you find the confidence that you've placed in yourself to put your name in the first place. And I think that's true in every part of our career, right? Like whether it's standing in front of the jury and having to deliver, and for that split second saying to yourself, oh my gosh, what if they don't believe me? Or standing in front of the 11th Circuit, whatever it is, you have that moment of, what am I doing here? And you have to pause and say, but I'm here. But I'm here. This is not an accident. I've got this.
Yeah, not just that I'm here, right? I belong here. Right?
I got here somehow. I mean, like, and no matter what, I'm gonna make the most of it. So I had that moment when I applied for Judge Moore and came down for my interview. I was not convinced that it wasn't an accident that I had somebody else's interview spot. And I actually thought to myself, it's silly, but the message had come into my roommate's telephone number. And I thought, I'm going anyway. I want this clerkship. And I had interviewed for several judges and my interviews were terrible because I was dripping with desperation. Please hire me.
Mhm.
And I thought, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to meet with this federal judge and I'm going to talk to him. It might actually be by accident. I might not have earned my spot in this interview, but I'm going to make the most of it. And I got the job.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story. Now, you're originally from Baltimore. That's a long way from Miami. How did you adjust?
Charm City.
But was it difficult to adjust to living in Miami?
Oh, so much so. I moved here in the summer of 2000 and there was so much to try to adjust to. This town, this lovely little town, the streets start off with one number and change to another, and then they have a name, and then you're back to a number, but it's not the first one that you started on, and you have not made a turn. Miami is it is a unique little place, but somebody gave me this very lengthy email from a friend of theirs who had lived in Miami. So I'd never known this person. And yet they gave me like this 4-paged email offering me all this advice about Miami. And I still think about it, including things like how to get to know Cuban coffee. Before I moved down here, I certainly did not know what a cortadito was, much less a colada. I mean, like none of it. And it is life-changing, career-changing to have Cuban coffee in your diet. But it is not where I thought I would live. I grew up on a farm in Maryland, and this is not what I thought life looked like, but I'm glad it is.
That's awesome. And we're glad you adjusted to the coffee because
Yes.
it's like you love it or you hate it, right? Now, Judge, we're going to do a little bit of fun questions. We did the
Great.
serious stuff. We got to know you a little bit more professionally and personally. Now we'll do a little bit of fun questions. You ready?
Ready?
Okay. What is one thing you'll never be caught wearing?
Leopard print.
What's one vice you wish you could give up?
Coffee.
There you go. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
One of the judges complimented my argument at the 11th Circuit.
Aw.
I just don't think I can top that.
That's amazing.
That is. When are you most inspired?
When I'm listening to our Supreme Court justices, I know that sounds corny. I don't know, but they I got to listen to Justice Sotomayor when she came down for her book tour in Miami.
Yeah.
And, I don't think I breathe the entire time, when I'm listening to them, and to have an audience,
That's your
it's
moment.
just the pinnacle of our career.
Yep. Mountains or the beach, Judge?
Mountains.
What's one thing people don't know about you?
That I wanted to be a vet and not a
Yeah.
judge.
That's right.
And the horses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we didn't know that. Where in the house do you go to hide from kids? Because let's be honest, we all hide from our children at times. So where do you
Outside. Yeah, outside. They don't look for me out there. It's remarkable.
go?
What do you prefer, the window or the aisle seat?
The window.
Diamonds or pearls?
Pearls, obviously.
Define yourself in 3 words.
Ooh. Loud. Generous. Outspoken.
I love it. What is the best advice you have ever received?
To throw my hat.
If you could switch lives with one person, who would it be? Dead or alive?
And it doesn't have to be forever, right? You can
Yeah.
switch and come back to being Judge Lewis.
Yes.
Isabella Worth. She's a dressage Olympian. I probably not for your target audience, but if I could have lived her life and been in the saddle and had her talent.
That's great. What's one talent you wish you had?
That would have been it. Yes, if I could have been a professional equestrian, we would not be doing this interview.
What would you tell 20-year-old Lauren today?
Slow down. Please slow down.
What's the biggest learning experience you have ever had?
Isn't it always our losses? I lost a trial that I deserved to lose, but I probably should not have tried. And I think about it a lot because I think about all of the flags all along the way that I ignored, and I was a prosecutor, so I didn't just lose a conviction. I had a victim in that case. And I still obviously think about it.
That is tough, Judge. Now, last question. Go ahead.
Is there anything you'd like women to know about you or your career that we haven't had a chance to ask you today?
Pick your mentors carefully. And by that, I don't mean to be overly selective in number. In fact, I encourage you to consider the opposite, to have lots of mentors. I think that folks worry about choosing someone who is high enough to pull them all the way.
Yeah.
And I think that mentors are all around us all the time. And so if you are choosing on the quality of the character as opposed to the name on the door or on the signature block, you're going to be doing yourself a world of good. And by focusing on, a set of characteristics that someone else may have imposed on you, you're limiting yourself. So open up your ears, your eyes, be open to the mentors that are around you and choose wisely.
Thank you, Judge Lewis. I think that's a wrap.
Thank you. We are so grateful that you decided to do this with us. We've learned a lot about you, and hopefully you enjoyed this experience. And you know, maybe in the future we'll have you back for more fun questions.
I appreciate it. I absolutely I'm so excited and hopeful that a lot of young people, young women in particular, are listening and have open minds to, you know, all the good that is around them, because it's there for the picking. You know, you just you got to be looking, you got to be open, you got to be picking. So thank you, ladies, for doing this. It's like it's a community service.
Aw,
You really
Thank
are.
you.
And you got to
Thank-
throw on the hat. We got that from you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not even mine. I stole it from someone else, but use it freely.
We will be.
We
Thank you,
will.
Judge.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thanks, ladies.